Hello, Anza. How
Hi,
are you?
Hi.
hi
Hi.
Anza. How's it going?
Great, great. It's going great. We are going to start, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amza Saqib, and welcome to CxO Global TV. CxO Global Forum is a knowledge sharing platform for all thought leaders across the globe. We take massive pride in contributing to the knowledge economy with our league of extraordinary ladies and gentlemen who are not only domain experts, but those key thought leaders who've made a significant amount of difference in the fields that they're working in. Today's panel discussion is a collaboration with Code-Based Technologies, and we partnered with them because of the nature of the topic. This is so important. So we're talking about the future of fintech. Now, we only wanted to put together some very, very esteemed speakers for you in this topic in particular. So today, joining us, we've got Ms. Komal Mansoor. She's the head of strategy in Landmark Investments. Mr. Mustafa Ramzan, I guess he'll be joining us shortly. He's a digital finance consultant at uh, 7-8 Simplicity. Then Mr. Rehan Ahmed Akhtar, who is from Karandas, and Mr. Umar Mansoor from CBD. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. So
Thank you for
let's
having us.
Great. So let's start with Mr. Rehan. So now we've been hearing now, especially post-pandemic, we've been hearing more than ever everything about fintech and how fintech is going to change and is already changing financial services and how people deal with finance. So how do you think fintech is shaping financial services?
Thank you, Anza, for that question. I think it's a very important sort of milestone in the journey of fintechs, especially in Pakistan, because it has definitely given a thrust to the demand. And a lot of people who really did not, at the heart, believe that a digital solution is something that they should adopt, and they were still sort of in the middle. For them, it gave them an opportunity. It gave them a trial, a flavor of what a digital financial services solution could be. And I think for most of them, if not all, an overwhelming majority is not going back to cash-based solution. We see that in the numbers, especially in the payments area. We see a very steep rise that people have started using digital financial services solutions, not only by fintechs, but also by the banks and the non-banks. And they've started using it predominantly. We have also started to see some of the use cases where I remember for the last few years, the country was struggling. Somehow the ecosystem has now come together. So when it comes to school fees, because this was a real issue for a lot of parents, that how do they pay school fees for the kids. So that has really seen an increase, and so on and so forth. Other use cases as well. So when it comes to payments, I mean, fintech is a lot bigger than payments only, but payments specifically has seen a very steep rise. The regulator has also played a positive role for the consumers, at least, by removing the fees for interbank transfer, and I think that has also helped improve the pull in terms of from the customer side. And lastly, I think it has also resulted in people having more trust, I would say, about that this digital financial service or the system actually works. Because time and again, if you look at any research, demand side research, lack of trust is considered as one key disabler. I think this trial, which all the financial industry together could not have made it happen through marketing or advertising, that COVID has actually sort of, given that trial or opportunity. Now it's really up to all of these suppliers and companies. How do they leverage on it? How do they take the customers forward? How do they keep them informed? and develop solutions which are basically targeting their needs.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you for sharing those valuable insights. Now, Mr. Omar Mansoor, since CPT is involved with, the architecture for most of, these fintech solutions, especially the new Roshan digital accounts or the previous, webinars that we've been conducting, and we've been talking a lot about the kind of work that you guys have been doing in fintech. So I think you'd be the right person to also address this issue from maybe a different perspective. How is
Well,
fintech shaping the future of financial services?
actually, it's funny that you asked this question. Fintech is not shaping the future of finance. It's customer demand. Fintech is basically just facilitating that customer demand, and in result, it is basically shaping the future as well. Roshan Digital being one of the key use cases that we basically had worked on and executed in Pakistan as well. But given our current experience in on a global scale as well, especially in countries like Singapore, Jordan, the Levant region, Dubai, etc., and so forth, what we basically have seen is that customers basically are looking for, as mentioned by Mr. Rehan as well. They want trust. They are basically looking for initiatives that support. How would you say this? Convenience. At the same time, the availability of a lot of these solutions that not only just make the life easier of the customer and give them that sense of uh, safety, especially when it's dealing with their money, but at the same time offering them um, a unique proposition that helps them get financially literate and at the same time provide financial inclusion as well. The whole idea of fintech was to basically address the unbankable market. So when you basically address the unbankable market and it responds back, you basically are changing the entire paradigm. And fintech has it not only just becomes a tool to address that, it ends up creating a paradigm shift that not only benefits the industry but overall contributes to the economy as well.
Right. I agree, sir. Thank you. And it's very interesting to see a refreshing take on the question. Now, Ms. Komal Mansoor, ma'am, first of all, I'd request you to maybe, there's a lot of background noise that's coming at your end, and it's becoming increasingly difficult. So, ma'am,
I'll
you
do that.
right. Thank you very much. So, you've been operating in this space for some time, and you have some experience with regards to this as well. So, do you think that fintech will replace conventional banking?
Um, Replacing conventional banking is a little too harsh to term it that way. I think fintech is the main reason for all the ease and convenience that it has brought in the banking sector. It has made our work a lot faster, efficient, convenient, easier. The fintechs have the liberty to be more innovative, and that is why they can deliver us more cost efficient and efficient solutions. Um, However, to some extent, I do believe that traditional banks are facing an existential threat from fintechs, and be it in every aspect, be it in payments or consumer lending or insurance and trading and all of those. So I believe in order to survive, banks will have to just re-strategize and think of fintechs not as competition but as partners. And a few strategies I think which banks can adopt is either they can acquire those fintechs and build synergies around them, or they can invest in those fintechs as a VC partner. Um, Another thing, I think what they can do is maybe build around strategic partnerships with these fintech firms. Like Goldman Sachs just partnered with Apple for their credit card. So I think the key is not to see fintechs as competition, but as strategic partners, long-term partners, and they'll have to embrace these strategies if they don't want to become extinct anytime soon.
Absolutely. And thank you, Mr. Mustafa Ramzan, for joining us. I would like your take on the question, and then I would also like to hear your take on how fintech is the future of finance.
Thank you, Anza. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I was actually backstage 5 minutes before 4 o'clock, but it took me a while. So, when we talk of fintechs in the context of a developing country, the dilemma we face as a country is that banks do not lend, and they love to lend to the government only. So, one area where I see some disruption happening in Pakistan is the lending space. With 100 million Pakistanis online now, in a mobile first world, buy now, pay later is something that is going to take off big time. Historically, you know, middle class tends to double every 10 years in Pakistan. And I'll reference Dr. Javed Ghani's famous paper on this. So, with a growing middle class, young population, uh, rising internet penetration, things are looking very good for Pakistan in terms of lending. As for payments, State Bank alone cannot ensure that mass scale payment ecosystem comes into being. This is where strong will from the government of Pakistan along with other institutions, especially FBR, needs to come up with a regulatory framework. In fact, a country level legislation needs to take place so that mass scale payments are somehow, I would say, on one hand, made mandatory, but on the second hand, all the stakeholders, be it retailers or consumers, are actually incentivized to pay digitally. We need to make digital payments more attractive than cash. It's the other way around still in this country, despite all the efforts by State Bank of Pakistan alone, be in terms of the issuance of the branchless banking regulatory framework, or recently EMI, or NBFCs through SCCP, of course. So I think this is where, and the next door, India has done it. A strong government will. If you see the numbers coming out of the UPI, the payment interface, those numbers are mind boggling. So I think as a country, we are still far from cracking payments at mass scale. Yes, you and I we go and swipe at POS. That's a KLI centric phenomenon. But you think the country, at least urban Pakistan, we are yet to get there. One area where I don't see fintechs focusing in Pakistan, there are 20 million farmers. Roughly 60% of the population lives in rural, which will be down to 50% 10 years from now. That's what is expected. So nobody's thinking rural. I think that's one area where fintechs need to focus. Now there are companies that are trying to work with farmers through microfinance, through integrated microfinance, but the same zeal and zest and the energy that we see, be it B2B space, be it lending or payment fintechs, nobody is thinking rural right now. And I think that's where there's huge potential for fintechs to actually get into and grab the market.
Right. Certainly. Thank you both for those insights. So I just request you to mute yourself while the other speaker speaks. Thank you. Mr. Omar Mansoor, that was an interesting take. And before I move on with my questions, I would like to hear your take on some of the things that Mr. Mustafa Ramzan said and how is fintech the future of finance?
Well, one of the very interesting things that Mr. Mustafa basically touched base on is especially this buy now pay later, and I really like the fact that you had mentioned about the statistics around the middle class and the growing population of Pakistan being mobile as well. 100 million in any shape or format is a very sizable number as well, and especially when you are coming from a developing or emerging market such as Pakistan, having solutions that are not only innovative as well but easy and simplified for the customers makes all the difference in the world. So whether you are a financial institution, or sorry, a traditional financial institution, and you are unable to provide that supply to the ever growing demand as well, the fintech will definitely come in the place, and it will address the need. If you basically take a few steps back and you basically understand how the concept of fintech basically came, it was basically people trying to solve the problems that the institutions that they had trusted could not basically do it. So, in terms of basically just going back to the question where you say that will fintech replace conventional banking? Honestly speaking, if the banks do not address the customer demand in the right way possible and actually focus on what their customers basically want, be it SME, be it agriculture, be it retail, etc., and so forth, and do not or continuously invest in the avenues to take care of their customers, it's only a matter of time where fintech will basically replace them. However, if they are, I do understand that a lot of financial institutions do have constraints, especially in the technology and strategy side of things.
Right.
It could be financial, it could be legacy architecture, etc., and so forth, and they're not easy things to basically overnight replace. However, if banks are actually serious about this, they can partner up, as mentioned by Ms. Komal as well, where uh, fintechs and financial institutions can come together and create joint propositions to basically provide to the market. Because now it's no longer a monopolized concept where you accept what I have and you take what you can get. It's no longer that thing. Customers have now been empowered with the power of choice through fintechs as well. And this is a very critical paradigm shift, because now you have non BFSI players coming into the market and challenging monolithic organizations such as Goldman Sachs, etc. Like Apple, a company that basically was made famous by the iPod, not even the iPhone,
Yeah.
has now come into the payment space as well by partnering up with Goldman Sachs. What's to say tomorrow Kareem is going to release a credit card and partner up with a financial institution and a fintech to offer microfinance capabilities and services as well. As techno and if you look at it from a technology point of view as well, most of the technologies are now adopting open banking regulations. They're adopting open banking standards as well. And as these standards are adopted, especially by emerging countries like Pakistan, you have now players like Amazon who want to now come into Pakistan as well, and they want to basically provide the local marketplace with all this information, all this opportunity for the marketplace to grow. And this allows fintechs to even to thrive even more, because now you can basically work in tandem alongside organizations such as Amazon, your Bazaar. At the same time, Kist Pay can also, provide their propositions as well, especially to support local markets and merchants. So it's basically becoming now like a melting pot, and now is the best time to sit back and see how the future will shape before your very eyes. And I'm telling you, it will be only about a year's time before Pakistan's entire economy is transformed. And with these regulations
Right.
accepted, we are able to seamlessly work on not just a local Pakistan scale, but on a global scale as well.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And you rightly pointed out that it's going to become the melting pot for all these ideas to come up. Mr. Rehan Akhtar, now we know that you've done some fabulous work in this regard. We've heard about the kind of work Karandas does, uh, Rast, so on and so forth. We've had your take on all of these things as well. But uh, can you quote examples for our audience about more of disruptive technologies in fintech that exist in Pakistan today?
First of all, I'd just like to give my perspective on the term fintech. I think it's a lot of times used as a supra term, and we develop this expectation that fintech is the savior of all the problems that we have in the financial system. For me, as a and from Karanda's platform as a development organization, we favor the term digital finance. Uh, there are a number of examples in the world out there where the incumbents, when challenged, rose up to the occasion and became the leaders in innovation. What this market definitely requires is innovative mindset, an investment that flows into innovative models and disruptive models. Be that the banks that are existing, will they be able to spin on their head and be able to do that, or will there be new smaller companies and it will be a fight of David and Goliath, and it will be that kind of a battle that's going to happen. I think a lot of it is also dependent on the market, the regulatory setup, and at least in our assessment. So, for example, we are not US, we are not Europe. And one big difference, if you compare our country from these countries, is the associations there, which represent a sector. It's very natural. In terms of coming to a common agenda between an industry players, it's very. I mean, because those countries have evolved in the industrial revolution a lot, so they understand the common of shared infrastructure. While in Pakistan, be that a CEO or the investor or the State, everybody wants to just have the pie, to themselves and not share. I firmly believe that unless that mindset really changes, today's small fintechs will become tomorrow's, lethargic, non-innovative sort of solutions or companies. So that mindset really has to change. Forever, you can't grow the industry uh, by just focusing on your own market share and your own customers. Somebody has to take the leadership role in the country to look at market development. Now, while new investment comes in and these fintechs comes in, so they definitely are going to stretch the boundaries, and that's where I think the regulator's role, the government's role, is to allow them to stretch the boundary. And that's where I think both SCCP and State Bank of Pakistan are doing, I would consider, a phenomenal job in trying to come up with all of these frameworks and regulatory sandboxes, etc., to
Right.
facilitate investors to come in and start a business, from that perspective. So I think I just wanted to sort of, conclude my perspective on fintech before I answer the question that you asked. That I think fintech is a very term which is sometimes considered as a very large impact. For us, we look at digital finance, and disruption is the key. The disruption, definitely the digital infrastructure that Mustafa also talked about, that is a key enabler. 100 million people having handset in their phone, internet penetration, etc., that definitely is a very key enabler. And that's where, if the government does not put its act together in terms of facilitating quality of service of internet, this fintech solution will go nowhere, because the desktop penetration is limited, and we are all using online anyways. So I think it's just be a switch of that. For real penetration or mobile first, which Mustafa referred to, I think for that you really need to have a quality service on internet as well. So there are a lot of building blocks that needs to come into play. And who knows, disruption could also happen on USSD. Maybe the bright minds have not really put
Right.
real thought Africa, there are a lot of examples. So in Pakistan, I think so far, I don't think there's a disruptive technology that's impacted at scale. There are a lot of technologies which are at an initial stage. One technology that we funded, which was biometric verification through camera.
Right,
Uh,
sir.
2 or 3 companies have developed that. That really reduces the cost of verification, especially biometric verification, tremendously. It not only removes the hurdle that you have to visit a center. You can actually initiate verification from your phone, etc., etc. So if there is
Absolutely, it's
insistence,
so simple because I've and so it's interesting that you mentioned that one of our members, the company, they're the solution architectures for that particular AI facial
yeah.
biometric recognition that's being employed. So um, it's interesting to note that these ideas that we have in Pakistan that are somewhat causing disruption, like you mentioned, are not just Western ideas or concepts that are brought forward, but they have been, fit to our culture and practices and norms, and they're indigenous in nature. So that's definitely something that's unique to Pakistan. Um, Now, moving on, Mr. Mustafa Ramzan. So, post pandemic, how has contactless payment become the norm? Because now we see more and more people who have who are not as comfortable dealing with cash in a cash-rich economy like Pakistan.
Well, I think all of these technologies are still in their infancy in Pakistan. State Bank just rolled out something related to the unification of the QR code. So typically you would see X number of QR codes by the different providers, acquirers, but now they want to unify it. If you look at China, China is number one in the world when it comes to digital payments. In fact, contactless payments, which are all QR code predominantly at retail, in physical retail. In Pakistan, I think one major breakthrough is the recent rollout. And it is still early days, they're just rolling it out. So I think by the time some traction comes into play, I think it will take another year and a half, 2 years. And I'm referring to NIFT's e-payment gateway for e-commerce. I think that's a major use case that's being solved, that at least we are able to digitize online payments. As
Right.
for offline payments, I think we're still predominantly a POS-based, regime. Unification of QR code, the recent revision by the State Bank in the Acquirers Commission scheme. Last but not the least, State Bank has also been assigning targets to banks uh, and branchless banking players to sign up QR-based agents. So I think all of these things going forward will shape up the ecosystem. There's one more thing I want to talk about. I think, as Rehan Bhai mentioned, to refer to disruption, there is one disruption in making, and it's a silent revolution. But again, it's very early stage, kind of infancy. With the rise of B2B e-commerce and few 100,000 merchants now buying online from the likes of bazaars, retailers, and jugnus, there is a possibility of us being able to crack cash flow based lending to the SME sector. I think that's one major area. Like I was just reading a post by Atif Inwan the other day. He was saying that one of the products that Bazaar has in its portfolio is called DG Khata. Excuse me if I'm not able to recall the correct name. It's something
You're right. It's called DigiKata.
DG Khata, and he was claiming to that 750,000 merchants are already using it. So based on that kind of knowledge, we have seen how in Africa, the likes of Copo, using AI algorithms, they're able to lend to the retailers real time so that they can stock more, they can sell more. So I think SME finance, there should be some serious disruption, in the days to come. I would say in the years to come, because Pakistan, it takes ages. I mean, last 10 years, we have seen what we have done with branches banking. One last point I want to make regarding, how incumbents will get activated. So I treat Easy Pesa and Jazz Cash almost as incumbents now. They were the disruption 10 years ago, but not anymore. They are incumbents now. And I think with these fintechs coming into play, cracking digital payments, digital lending, this will just awaken the beasts, I think. I think Easy Pesa and Jazz Cash will go after this market as soon as this market is cracked by these fintechs. They'll either acquire these fintechs, do alliances. So I foresee exciting times ahead in Pakistan.
Thank you, sir. Now, Ms. Komal Mansoor, now we've spoken about a lot of the merits of fintech and how financial services will look like in the future as well. Now, what are some of the risks that we can anticipate in the future with regards to fintech?
So, whenever there is something new in the market, it always reminds me of this Spider-Man dialogue. With great power comes great responsibility. So, yes, it's not all roses out there. We do have a lot of responsibility when it comes to launching new solutions. Um, the usual ones, yes, the loss of privacy, the malware attacks, theft of funds, rising risk of frauds and scams. Those are very much prevalent, and the compliance and the regulators are always after these issues, to tackle these issues, to mitigate these risks. Um, I think some emerging risks that we might see more of now is algorithm-based decision making, which lead to a lot of unfair outcomes, because we have seen this in trading terminals all over, where the client describes his own preferences, the market trends, but it always it sometimes leads to unfair outcomes. So that is one risk which I think would emerge. The second, which is more the low hanging risk, is the product unsuitability. A consumer right now is faced with so many options, that choosing the right one, the lack of knowledge or the lack of awareness with the consumer is there, and that could lead to significant risks and losses for the consumer.
Some relevant points made, ma'am. Mr. Umar Mansoor, same question to you, sir.
So, in our experience, so we have basically worked in multiple facets of finance and fintech as well, and especially technology-driven initiatives. And what some of the risks that we have basically come across, or we have tried to anticipate for, one, you cannot prepare for all the risks. There are certain things that are foreseeable and unforeseeable as well. One of the biggest risks that I believe everybody on this panel can agree with me is the ever-changing regulatory environment as well. At the same time, and I'm speaking on behalf from a Pakistan perspective as well, because we evolve fast, etc. and so forth. So in order to align ourselves with what the global standards for regulations are, especially around the various facets of financial services that we're trying to technology driven financial services that we're trying to basically provide, there could be certain rules and regulations that could possibly change in the near future, or at the drop of a hat. At the end of the day, what we can do is we can only just complement it with what state bank basically mandates us to do, or within how much we can basically spread our wings to. Another one basically is the technology. Technology will always be a risk. If you keep up well and good, you steer clear of, or you avert the majority of the risk. However, if you don't keep up, there's a very high chance that you could be left behind, and when you're left behind, the catch up becomes harder, because if you look at the speed at which technology is basically evolving at, up until a few years back, we did not have the concepts or popularized concepts of microservices, or containerized architectures, and the word API being thrown around casually. But now, if you look at it, majority of the systems and the solutions that are being deployed, if you are not API driven, you are obsolete. And even that phrase alone is now starting to be a very dated phase. Whereas now people are anticipating what could be the next step after API. How am I going to do it? So now people are going around with things like microservices. And if you do not keep on top of what changes are happening in the world from a technology perspective, that could basically risk not only just a fintech, but your overall platform and proposition. And last but not least as well, and this basically I would agree with Ms. Komal's comment on product suitability as well. One of the risks with fintech has always been that, and what's always given fintech the edge is that the amount of research that basically goes in to understand and address what the customers basically are asking for, what the economy or the industry basically is looking forward, be it from a technology perspective or be it from a B2C perspective as well, what the customer wants. So, if your technology is not suitable or you've created something that is not workable, it's a risk for yourself as an organization, because at the end of the day, if you're not suitable from the get go, then you are obsolete. So, you don't contribute anything to the environment.
Right, sir. Um, Valid points made indeed. Unfortunately, today, in the interest of time, we've had a very, very productive discussion, but I'm going to ask Mr. Rehan Akhtar for his final takeaway from today's interesting panel discussion.
Yeah, I think thank you, Anza. Very different perspectives of where this market is headed. I think we definitely agree that market is headed towards better adoption, more investment, opening up of the sector. So from both supply side and demand side, I think there are positive sort of indicators which we can see that there's only future is only bright, and it's a matter of time only. I do relate to frustration of Mustafa that it will be a slow development, and how can we accelerate that? That's a mission that we also carry. That how can we accelerate? I think the only difference between our neighboring country and us is that, and Omar also mentioned, a link towards that is a consistent policy. And if we just are consistent with our policy, I think we can reap the dividends of this, very, very crucial development. There are a lot of benefits of this development. The country, individuals, everybody is going to benefit from this. I just want to mention one risk, though you didn't ask that question to me. Digitization has one of the bigger risks that while it is a great equalizer, it also amplifies the disparities. So gender inequality, that is definitely a very big risk. Women are not included in financial services generally, and with each digitization effort, with each increase in financial inclusion, the gap is increasing. That's a very unwanted development. We must, policymakers and actors and investors must focus on that 49 or 50% of our population that must be looked into, and what could be done if that a social norm or any other thing that needs to be done. It needs to be done. Now is the time. Otherwise, we will have a ecosystem where we will not have participation from majority of women, and that will be very unfortunate.
Right, and like Mr. Rehan Akhtar mentioned, so it's very pertinent that we involve all the stakeholders, and the goal here should be to make all the genders financially inclusive. After all, that is what we all aim to achieve with fintech, to uh, bring finance and financial freedom, digital finance and financial inclusion to those communities that never imagined having that sort of financial independence. With that thought, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end today's session. And thank you so much to our esteemed panelists for joining us and enlightening us with their thoughts. Thank you, Codebase Tech, for your support and strategic partnerships. Please continue them in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, please keep us updated with your comments and feedback. If you want to learn more about the kind of work, the kind of great work that our panelists are doing, we've shared some links in the description below. Up until next time, here's me signing off. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.